My husband demanded a divorce at my 68 years. I'm taking everything, the house, the car, the accounts. My lawyer shouted, "Fight back!" But I calmly signed all the papers. He celebrated for 2 weeks. Until one morning, someone walked up to the front door. "Good day, dear listeners. It's Clara again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. For 43 years, I believed I knew my husband. We built our life together brick by brick. A modest 2-story house in suburban Ohio, 2 grown children, 3 grandchildren, and what I thought was an unshakable foundation of trust. At 68, I'd earned my gray hair and the right to enjoy my retirement in peace. Or so I thought. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday morning in March. Richard came down for breakfast, wearing cologne. In our entire marriage, the man had never worn cologne to his accounting firm. "Client meeting," he mumbled, avoiding my eyes as he grabbed his briefcase. Something twisted in my stomach, but I pushed it away. After 4 decades together, surely I was being paranoid. But the signs multiplied like weeds. Late-night phone calls he took in the garage. Weekend golf tournaments that left him sunburned in odd places. His left arm tanned, his right pale. Receipts for restaurants I'd never been to, tucked carelessly in his pockets. When I asked about them, he'd sigh heavily, as if I were being unreasonable. "Business dinners, Margaret. You wouldn't understand." I understood more than he realized. I'd been managing our household finances for years while he climbed the corporate ladder. I knew every account, every investment, every asset we owned, and I was starting to notice discrepancies. Then came the flowers. Not for me. Never for me anymore. But I'd catch him on the phone, lowering his voice. "Yes, roses. The red ones. You know which ones." The tenderness in his tone was a knife between my ribs. When had he last spoken to me that way? I could have confronted him then. Part of me wanted to. But something held me back. An instinct honed by years of watching, waiting, managing. I'd always been the steady one, the planner. While Richard chased promotions and accolades, I'd kept our family running, kept our home standing. I wasn't about to make a move without knowing exactly what I was dealing with, so I started paying closer attention. I noticed the way he'd angle his phone away when texting. The mysterious charges on our credit card, jewelry stores, boutique hotels, expensive wine, always with cashback, as if he were trying to hide the amounts. Did he think I was blind? Or just stupid? The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in early May. I'd made his favorite dinner, pot roast with carrots and potatoes, the way his mother used to make it. He barely touched it, pushing food around his plate like a sullen teenager. "Margaret," he said finally, setting down his fork with a decisive clink, "we need to talk." My heart hammered, but I kept my voice steady. "About what, dear?" He couldn't even look at me. 43 years of marriage, and the coward couldn't meet my eyes. "I want a divorce." The words hung in the air like smoke. I'd known somehow that this was coming, but hearing it still felt like a physical blow. "I see," I said quietly. "And may I ask why?" "We've grown apart." His prepared speech, no doubt. Rehearsed in front of his bathroom mirror, or perhaps whispered into some other woman's ear. "We want different things now. I need space to find myself." Find himself. At 71 years old, Richard was going to find himself. "I want to make this easy," he continued, his voice taking on that patronizing tone I'd learned to hate. "I've already consulted with a lawyer. I'm willing to be generous." Generous. The word made me want to laugh or scream. I did neither. I'll take the house, he said, ticking items off on his fingers as if reading a grocery list. The car, the Lexus, obviously. The savings accounts, the investment portfolio. You can keep your jewelry and personal items, of course. Of course. How magnanimous. And the lake house? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. That too. It's in my name, after all. Everything was in his name. I'd never questioned it before. Why would I? We were partners. We were supposed to be a team. I've already had the papers drawn up, Richard said, sliding a manila folder across the table. My lawyer says this is fair. More than fair, actually. You should probably get your own attorney to look them over. But Margaret... He finally met my eyes, and what I saw there chilled me to the bone. Nothing. No love, no regret, no acknowledgement of the life we'd shared. Don't fight me on this. It'll only make things uglier. Was that a threat? From the man who'd promised to love me in sickness and in health, till death do us part? I looked down at the folder, my hands trembling slightly. Inside were the papers that would erase 43 years as if they'd never existed. I'll need time to think, I said. Richard shrugged. Take a week, but Margaret? I'm not changing my mind. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, the manila folder unopened before me, and took inventory of my life. 43 years of marriage. 2 children I'd raised mostly alone while Richard built his career. A home I'd cleaned, decorated, and maintained. Meals I'd cooked. Holidays I'd orchestrated. His mother's long illness I'd managed, sitting by her bedside when he was too busy with work. The sacrifice of my own teaching career so he could accept that transfer to Cincinnati. What did I have to show for it? Legally, apparently, nothing. Everything was in Richard's name. The house, the cars, the investments, even the lake house we'd bought together 15 years ago. I'd never bothered to check whose name was on the deed. Why would I? We were married. We were supposed to be partners. I'd been such a fool. The fear came in waves. At 68, what was I supposed to do? Start over? Find an apartment? Live on whatever scraps Richard decided to throw me? Social Security would barely cover rent, let alone everything else. I had no career to return to, no independent income. I'd made myself completely dependent on a man who was now discarding me like yesterday's newspaper. My hands shook as I finally opened the folder. The legal language was dense, deliberately confusing, but the bottom line was clear. Richard got everything. I'd receive a small monthly stipend, barely enough to survive on. And that was it. 43 years reduced to a pittance. I should call a lawyer, I thought. Fight this. But even that thought exhausted me. Legal battles cost money I didn't have. And Richard's attorney would be top tier, expensive. He'd bury me in paperwork and fees until I had no choice but to accept whatever crumbs he offered. Unless... I sat up straighter, an idea beginning to form. Richard thought I was helpless. Thought I was just the little housewife who didn't understand business matters. He'd been condescending to me for years, dismissing my opinions, patting my hand like I was a child. But he'd forgotten something crucial. I wasn't stupid. And I hadn't spent 43 years managing a household without learning how to plan, strategize, and execute. The next morning, I called my daughter, Jennifer. "Mom?" she answered, surprise in her voice. We'd grown distant over the years, my fault as much as hers. "Is everything okay?" "Your father wants a divorce," I said simply. Silence. Then, "What?" "Mom, no, he wouldn't." "He would. He did. Jennifer, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Has your father seemed different lately, when you've talked to him?" Another pause. "He's been weird," she admitted finally. distracted. And there was this woman at his office party last month. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but what woman? Young? Maybe 35? She kept touching his arm, laughing at everything he said. He introduced her as his associate, but Mom, the way they looked at each other, there it was. Confirmation of what I'd already known. Some part of me had hoped I was wrong, that maybe this really was just about Richard finding himself or whatever midlife crisis garbage he'd fed me. But no, there was another woman. Of course there was. Mom? Jennifer's voice cracked. What are you going to do? Good question. What was I going to do? I'm going to be smart about this, I said, surprised by the steel in my own voice. Jennifer, I need you to do something for me. Don't tell your father we've talked. Don't tell him anything. Can you do that? Of course, but... And I need the name of a good lawyer, not a divorce attorney, not yet. Someone who specializes in financial investigations. Can you find that for me? Financial investigations? Mom, what are you planning? I looked at the divorce papers spread across my kitchen table, at the house I'd made into a home, at the life I'd built only to have it stolen from under me. I'm planning, I said slowly, to find out exactly what your father has been hiding. Because, Jennifer, in 43 years of marriage, I've learned one thing. When a man suddenly wants to leave with everything, it's because he's afraid of something, and I'm going to find out what. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet kitchen and let myself feel it. The fear, the anger, the grief. I gave myself exactly 10 minutes to cry. Then I dried my eyes, made a pot of strong coffee, and got to work. Jennifer called back within 2 hours with a name. David Chen, a forensic accountant who'd helped her friend during a messy business partnership dissolution. He's expensive, Mom, she warned, but he's good. I used money from my personal account, the one Richard had let me keep for household expenses, to pay for the consultation. Mr. Chen's office was in downtown Cincinnati, a sleek high-rise that made me feel small and old. But when he shook my hand, his eyes were kind. Mrs. Patterson, he said, gesturing to a chair, tell me everything. I did. The sudden divorce demand, the papers giving Richard everything, my suspicions about another woman. When I mentioned the financial discrepancies I'd noticed, he leaned forward, interested. Do you have access to bank statements? Credit card records? I manage our household account, I said. But Richard has several accounts I don't have direct access to. I just see the transfers when he moves money around. That's enough to start. Mr. Chen's smile was sharp. Mrs. Patterson, before we go any further, I need to be honest with you. If your husband is hiding assets or engaging in financial misconduct, finding proof will take time, and it may get uncomfortable. He'll notice you're looking. Are you prepared for that? Was I? I thought about Richard's cold eyes across the dinner table, his dismissive tone, the way he'd already written me out of his life. Yes, I said. I'm prepared. Over the next week, I became a spy in my own home. I photographed every document I could find in Richard's study, bank statements, investment records, receipts. I created a new email account Richard didn't know about and forwarded everything to Mr. Chen. I felt like a criminal sneaking around my own house, but the alternative was accepting defeat, and I wasn't ready to do that. Richard noticed the change. How could he not? I'd stopped asking about his day, stopped trying to make conversation. I was polite but distant, playing the role of the defeated wife. Have you thought about the papers? He asked one evening, his tone carefully casual. I'm still considering my options, I replied. His jaw tightened. Margaret, dragging this out won't change anything. I've been very generous. Have you? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Richard's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, I said quickly. I just want to make sure I understand everything before I sign. There's nothing to understand. It's straightforward. But there was something new in his voice now. Wariness. He was wondering what I was up to. Good. Let him wonder. 2 days later, Mr. Chen called. "Mrs. Patterson, I need you to come to my office. We need to talk." The drive downtown felt endless. When I arrived, Mr. Chen's expression was grave. "I found something," he said, spreading documents across his desk. "Several somethings, actually. Mrs. Patterson, has your husband ever mentioned a company called Meridian Consulting?" I frowned. "No. Why?" "Because he owns it. Registered it 3 years ago. According to these records, Meridian Consulting has been receiving payments from your husband's firm, payments that look suspiciously like kickbacks for steering clients to preferred vendors." My stomach dropped. "That's illegal." "Very. And there's more. Your husband has been systematically moving money out of your joint assets into accounts under Meridian's name. Over the past year alone, he's transferred nearly $200,000. $200,000. I felt dizzy. "He's been planning this divorce for a while," Mr. Chen continued, "hiding marital assets, creating a paper trail that makes it look like he has far less than he actually does. When you sign those divorce papers, you'll be signing away your right to money that's legally half yours." "Can we prove this?" My voice sounded strange, distant. "We can. But Mrs. Patterson, if we expose this, we're not just talking about divorce court. This is fraud. Potentially criminal fraud. Your husband could face serious consequences. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about the woman at Richard's office party, touching his arm. The cologne. The late nights. 43 years of my life he was trying to erase. "Yes," I said. "I'm prepared." That night, Richard came home late, smelling of perfume that wasn't mine. He found me in the living room, the divorce papers on the coffee table. "Finally ready to sign?" he asked, actually smiling. I looked up at him, this stranger wearing my husband's face, and smiled back. "Actually," I said sweetly, "I have a few questions first, about Meridian Consulting." The color drained from his face. "How do you—" He stopped, regrouped. "That's just a small business venture. Nothing to do with the divorce." "Isn't it?" I kept my voice light, innocent. "Because it seems like quite a lot of our money has been going there lately." Richard's mask slipped. For just a moment, I saw fear flash across his face. Then anger replaced it. "You've been snooping." His voice was hard now, threatening. "Going through my private papers." "Our papers," I corrected gently. "We're still married, Richard. Community property state, remember." He took a step toward me, and I forced myself not to flinch. "Margaret," he said, "you're making a mistake, a big one. Sign the papers. Take the deal I'm offering. Don't make this ugly." "Or what?" I asked. He didn't answer, but the look in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. The war had begun. The next morning, I filed for divorce myself. Not with Richard's terms, but with my own attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Holloway, who specialized in high-asset divorces. When the papers were served to Richard at his office, I was at Mr. Chen's office, signing documents that would freeze all joint accounts and file formal complaints about the Meridian Consulting irregularities. Richard came home that evening like a thunderstorm. He didn't knock, didn't call out, just slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he shouted, storming into the kitchen, where I was calmly preparing dinner. "Making myself a salad," I said. "Would you like one?" "Don't play games with me, Margaret." His face was red, a vein pulsing in his forehead. "You froze the accounts. You filed complaints with my firm. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I have every idea." I set down my knife and turned to face him. I've protected what's legally mine, what's legally. There is no ours anymore. He was shouting now, completely out of control. I'm divorcing you. Those accounts, that money, it's mine. I earned it. We'll let the court decide that. For a moment, I thought he might actually hit me. His fist clenched, his whole body trembling with rage. But he caught himself, took a step back. You're going to regret this, he said, his voice dropping to something quieter and far more dangerous. I have lawyers, Margaret. Good ones. They'll tie you up in court for years. You'll spend every penny you have fighting me, and you'll still lose. Maybe, I said. Or maybe the court will be very interested in where $200,000 of marital assets disappeared to. His eyes widened. You can't prove anything. Can't I? I smiled. Richard, I've been managing household finances for 43 years. Did you really think I wouldn't notice the patterns? The transfers? The fake consulting company? Before he could respond, the doorbell rang. Richard's head snapped toward the sound. Expecting someone? I asked innocently. I already knew who it was. I'd seen her car pull up, a red BMW, flashy and new. When Richard didn't move, I walked to the door and opened it myself. She was younger than I'd expected. Not 35 like Jennifer had guessed, but maybe 40. Blonde, carefully made up, wearing a dress that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She looked at me with something between pity and contempt. You must be Margaret, she said. I'm Vanessa Caldwell, Richard's friend. Friend, I repeated. How nice. Please come in. I was just making dinner. There's plenty. Vanessa looked past me to Richard, confusion crossing her face. This wasn't how this was supposed to go, clearly. The wronged wife was supposed to cry, to scream, to fall apart. Margaret! Richard started, but I cut him off. No, let her in. I think it's time we all had a talk, don't you? Vanessa stepped inside, her heels clicking on the hardwood I'd polished just yesterday. She moved to Richard's side, territorial, marking her claim. Richard told me you were being difficult about the divorce, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. I wanted to come here, woman to woman, and help you understand. This is for the best. You and Richard have grown apart. Surely you can see that. What I can see, I said calmly, is that my husband has been embezzling money from his firm and hiding marital assets to fund his midlife crisis. What I can see is that you're complicit in fraud. The question is, did you know about the financial crimes, or were you just enjoying the expensive dinners and jewelry? Vanessa's face went white. What? I don't... The necklace you're wearing? I continued. Cartier, if I'm not mistaken. Purchased 4 months ago with money from Meridian Consulting, which is funded with money Richard stole from our marriage and possibly from his employer. That makes you, technically, in possession of stolen property. You're insane, Vanessa hissed, but her hand went to her throat, touching the diamonds there. Am I? We'll see what the authorities say. Richard grabbed Vanessa's arm. We're leaving, now. Excellent idea, I said. Oh, and Richard, the locks will be changed tomorrow. This is my house too, and I don't feel safe with you here. My attorney is filing a restraining order. If you need your things, she'll arrange a supervised visit. You can't do that. Actually, I can. Consult your expensive lawyers. I held the door open. Goodbye, Richard. Vanessa. They left. Vanessa's heels clicking frantically, Richard's curses floating back through the evening air. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it. Then, finally, I let myself shake. The next 3 days were a blur. I changed the locks. I filed the restraining order. I moved into the guest room and barely slept, jumping at every sound. Richard's lawyer sent threatening letters. Vanessa left nasty voicemails calling me bitter, pathetic, a sad old woman clinging to a dead marriage. Maybe I was all those things, but I wasn't giving up. On the fourth day, Jennifer came over with groceries and soup. "Mom," she said, pulling me into a hug, "you need to rest. You look exhausted." She was right. I was running on empty, adrenaline and coffee and pure stubbornness. "Take a few days," she urged. "Let the lawyers handle things. You've done enough." So I did. I slept. I ate. I sat in my garden and watched the birds and tried not to think about Richard or Vanessa or the battle ahead. I needed to rebuild my strength, because I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The call came on a sunny Tuesday morning. I was in the garden, deadheading roses, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Hello? Margaret?" A woman's voice, smooth and professional. "This is Diane Morrison. I'm Richard's attorney." I straightened up, immediately on guard. "I have an attorney, Ms. Morrison. You should speak with her." Of course. I just thought we might have a conversation, woman to woman, off the record." Nothing was ever off the record with lawyers. "I'm listening." "Richard feels terrible about how things have escalated," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "The restraining order, the frozen accounts, it's all gotten so ugly. He wants to make things right." "Does he?" "He's prepared to offer a much more generous settlement. The house, for instance. He's willing to let you stay there for up to a year while you figure out your next steps. And he'll increase the monthly support substantially. All you have to do is drop the fraud complaints and sign the revised agreement." There it was. The bait. The temptation. A year in my house. More money. An end to the stress and sleepless nights and constant fear. All I had to do was let Richard get away with stealing from me. From his company. From everyone who'd trusted him. "That's very generous," I said carefully. "Isn't it? Margaret, between you and me, fighting this will only hurt you. Richard has resources. He can drag this out for years. The legal fees alone will bankrupt you. Why not take the win and move on with your life?" "I'll think about it," I said. "Don't think too long. This offer expires Friday." After she hung up, I stood in my garden, shears in hand, and felt the pull of it. The easy way out. The path of least resistance. Then I thought about Vanessa's smug face. Richard's cold eyes. The way he'd casually planned to leave me with nothing after 43 years. I called Patricia Holloway. "They're trying to settle," I told her, "with conditions." "Let me guess. They want you to drop the fraud investigation. How did you know?" "Because Richard's scared, Margaret. Really scared. His firm has started their own internal investigation. If you drop your complaint, it all goes away quietly. That's what this is about." "And if I don't drop it?" A pause. "Then this gets messier, uglier. But you have them on the defensive. That's good." That evening, Jennifer came over with takeout. But she wasn't alone. My son, Marcus, was with her. I hadn't seen him in months. He lived in Seattle, worked in tech, rarely came home. "Hey, Mom," he said, pulling me into a tight hug. "Jen told me what's going on. I got on a plane." Something in my chest cracked. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did. Dad's being an ass and you need backup." Over dinner, I told them everything. The fraud, the hidden money, Vanessa, the threats. They listened, their faces growing darker. "He's not getting away with this," Marcus said firmly. "Mom, whatever you need, lawyers, money, somewhere to stay if it comes to that. We're here." "I have a friend who's a financial analyst," Jennifer added. "I already asked her to look at the documents you gave Mr. Chen. She says the case is solid." "You told someone?" "Someone I trust. Mom, you can't do this alone. Let us help." That night, after they left, I sat in my quiet house and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Not because I thought this would be easy, but because I wasn't alone anymore. The next day, Richard's lawyer called again. "Mrs. Patterson, have you had a chance to consider our offer?" "I have," I said, "and the answer is no." Silence. Then, "Margaret, I strongly advise you to reconsider. This will not end well for you." "Perhaps not, but it won't end well for Richard either. You're making a mistake." "That's my choice to make." I kept my voice steady, calm. No anger, no fear. "Is there anything else, Ms. Morrison?" She hung up without another word. 2 days later, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "You should have taken the deal. You'll regret this." Vanessa? It had to be. I showed it to Patricia, who immediately filed it as evidence of harassment. "They're rattled," she said with satisfaction. "Good. Let them sweat." But I knew this was just the opening salvo. Richard and Vanessa were regrouping, watching, planning their next move. Fine. Let them plan. I had plans of my own. That Sunday, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to church. Not for religion exactly, but for community. I sat in the back pew and listened to the sermon about resilience and faith, and afterward, 3 different women came up to ask how I was doing. Word travels fast in small communities. They knew about the divorce. Some looked at me with pity, but others, the ones who'd been through their own battles, looked at me with understanding. "You need anything, Margaret, you call," said Ruth Henderson, squeezing my hand. She'd divorced her own cheating husband 20 years ago. "Don't let them grind you down." I wouldn't. I was done being ground down. They came on a Wednesday evening, just as twilight was settling over the neighborhood. I was reading in the living room when I heard the knock. Soft, almost apologetic. Through the peephole, I saw Richard. Alone this time, or so it appeared. He was wearing his sincere face, the one he used to use when apologizing for missing dinner or forgetting an anniversary. I opened the door but kept the chain on. "Richard, Margaret," he tried a smile. "Can we talk? Please? I know I don't have the right to ask, but 5 minutes, that's all." Every instinct screamed not to let him in, but curiosity won. I wanted to see what game he was playing now. I unlocked the chain. He stepped inside, and I saw the flash of movement behind him, Vanessa, emerging from where she'd been standing just out of sight. Of course. They'd planned this together. "What is she doing here?" I asked, my voice cold. "We both wanted to talk to you," Richard said, his tone placating. "Margaret, we've all said things in anger, done things. But it doesn't have to be like this. We can end this civilly." Vanessa moved to his side, and I saw something I'd missed before. A ring on her left hand, large, ostentatious. An engagement ring. "You're engaged," I said flatly. "Yes." Vanessa lifted her chin. "Richard and I are getting married, as soon as the divorce is final." "How lovely. Congratulations on your fiancé, the embezzler." Richard's jaw tightened. "I'm not an embezzler. That's ridiculous. Margaret, you're embarrassing yourself with these accusations. My firm investigated and found nothing wrong. Because you haven't been caught yet." "Listen to yourself." Vanessa's voice rose, shrill. "You're a bitter old woman who can't accept that she's being replaced. Richard tried to be kind, tried to give you a dignified exit, and you've turned it into a circus." "Dignified?" I laughed. "Taking everything I've spent 43 years building is dignified?" "You didn't build anything," Vanessa snapped. "Richard built it. His career, his money, his success. You were just there, cooking meals and folding laundry. Anyone could have done that." The words were designed to hurt, and they did. But I'd been expecting them. Is that what you think? I asked quietly. That raising children, managing a home, supporting a spouse, that's nothing? It's not nothing, Richard interjected, trying to regain control of the conversation. Vanessa didn't mean I meant exactly what I said. Vanessa's mask had fully slipped now. I could see the contempt in her eyes, the triumph. She thought she'd won. You're pathetic, Margaret. Clinging to a man who doesn't want you anymore. Making up lies about fraud and theft because you can't accept the truth. Richard outgrew you. You're old news. Yesterday's model. And you're what? Tomorrow's news? I kept my voice even. Tell me, Vanessa, does Richard know you were married when you two started your affair? Or that your divorce from your last husband involved accusations of financial impropriety? Her face went white. How did you... I've been doing my homework. I looked at Richard. Did she tell you she has a pattern? 3 previous relationships with wealthy married men? That her real name isn't Vanessa Caldwell but Vanessa Kim? That she changed it after her last boyfriend's wife sued her? That's a lie, Vanessa shrieked. Richard, she's making this up. But Richard was looking at her with new eyes. Uncertainty. Doubt. I pressed my advantage. I have the court records, Richard. Her real identity. Her history. She's a con artist. And you're her mark. You bitch! Vanessa hissed, lunging toward me. Richard caught her arm. Vanessa, stop! She's lying. Maybe. Richard's voice was cold now. But maybe not. We'll discuss this later. He turned to me, and I saw calculation in his eyes. This wasn't about reconciliation. It never had been. They'd come to intimidate me, to break me down, to force me into submission. But it hadn't worked. Last chance, Margaret, Richard said. Drop the fraud complaints. Take the settlement. Walk away before this destroys both of us. Or what? I asked. Or I'll make sure you lose everything. The house, the money, your reputation. I'll drag your name through the mud until no one in this town will look at you. I'll make your children choose sides. I'll... Get out. My voice was quiet but firm. They both stared at me. Get out of my house. Now. Before I call the police and report that you've violated the restraining order. For a moment, I thought Richard might refuse. But then he grabbed Vanessa's arm and pulled her toward the door. You'll regret this, he said. Maybe, I replied. But not as much as you will. They left, Vanessa's angry voice fading as they walked to their car. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it. My heart racing. My hands were shaking. Fear coursed through me, fear of what Richard might do, how far he might go. But underneath the fear was something stronger. Resolve. They'd shown me their true faces. Their masks were off. And now I knew exactly what I was fighting. Not for money, not even for justice, for dignity, for the truth. For every woman who'd ever been told she was just a housewife, that her contributions didn't matter. I wasn't backing down. Not now, not ever. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in early September. 6 months after Richard had asked for a divorce, we were finally facing each other in court. I'd barely slept the night before, but I was ready. Patricia had prepared me thoroughly. Mr. Chen had assembled an airtight case, and I had something else. The truth. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, almost intimate. Richard sat at the defendant's table with his lawyers. 3 of them, all in expensive suits. Vanessa sat in the gallery, her hand protectively over her stomach. Pregnant. Of course. Another manipulation. Another play for sympathy. Judge Maria Santos took her seat. A no-nonsense woman in her 50s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Let's begin, she said. Patricia stood, calm and professional. Your Honor, this case is about more than just a divorce. It's about systematic fraud, the concealment of marital assets, and the attempted theft of community property. Richard's lead attorney, a silver-haired man named Harrison Blake, immediately objected more than just a divorce. It's about systematic fraud, the concealment of marital assets, and the attempted theft of community property. Richard's lead attorney, a silver-haired man named Harrison Blake, immediately objected. Your Honor, these are unfounded accusations made by a bitter spouse seeking revenge. I'll determine what's founded and what isn't, Mr. Blake. Judge Santos cut him off. Miss Holloway, present your evidence. For the next hour, Patricia and Mr. Chen laid it all out. The Meridian Consulting Shell Company, the transfers of marital funds, the kickback scheme with Richard's firm, bank records, emails, financial statements, a paper trail that Richard had thought he'd hidden well enough. But he hadn't counted on me paying attention all those years. Richard's face grew redder as the evidence mounted. His lawyers whispered frantically among themselves, scrambling to find counter-arguments. Your Honor, Patricia said, we've also discovered that Mr. Patterson has been underreporting his income to avoid higher support payments. His actual annual income is approximately $370,000, not the $200,000 he claimed. That's not true, Richard burst out, half rising from his seat. Mr. Patterson, Judge Santos warned, control yourself. He can't, I said quietly to Patricia. He's losing control. I was right. Richard was unraveling, his carefully constructed facade crumbling. Then Patricia called her surprise witness, Donald Grayson, Richard's supervisor at the firm. Mr. Grayson, Patricia said, can you tell the court about your firm's recent internal investigation into Mr. Patterson's activities? Grayson, a distinguished man in his 60s, looked uncomfortable. We discovered irregularities in several accounts Mr. Patterson managed. Client funds were being directed to vendors with connections to Meridian Consulting. When we investigated, we found that Mr. Patterson owned Meridian. What action has the firm taken? Mr. Patterson was terminated 3 weeks ago. We're currently working with federal investigators to determine the full extent of the fraud. The courtroom erupted. Richard was on his feet, shouting, That's a lie! Donald, they can't prove— Sit down, Mr. Patterson! Judge Santos's gavel cracked like thunder. But Richard was beyond reason now. This is a setup! Margaret planned this whole thing. She's trying to destroy me. By exposing your crimes? Patricia asked calmly. They're not crimes. It's business. It's complicated. She doesn't understand. I understand perfectly, I said, speaking for the first time. My voice was quiet, but it carried. I understand that you stole from our marriage, from your employer, from the clients who trusted you. I understand that you planned to leave me with nothing while you started a new life with your pregnant girlfriend. I understand that you thought I was too stupid, too passive, too beaten down to fight back. Richard stared at me, and for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. You underestimated me, I continued. You always did. I was just the housewife, right? Just the woman who cooked your meals and raised your children and kept your life running smoothly so you could focus on your career. You thought I didn't pay attention. You thought I didn't matter. Margaret. But I was paying attention, Richard, every single day. And I matter. My contributions matter. The life I built matters. And I'm not letting you steal it. Vanessa stood up in the gallery, her voice shrill. You're just jealous. You're a dried-up old woman who can't stand that Richard found someone better. Ms. Caldwell, Judge Santos said icily, one more outburst and you'll be held in contempt. In fact, she looked at Patricia. Ms. Holloway, did you say Ms. Caldwell is pregnant? Yes, Your Honor, 5 months. Which means, Judge Santos's tone was sharp, conception occurred while Mr. Patterson was still married. Mr. Blake, I assume you're aware that adultery is still relevant in asset division in this state. Blake's face was ashen. Your Honor, And Mr. Grayson, these federal investigators, have they filed charges yet? They're preparing to, Your Honor. We expect indictments within the month. Judge Santos sat back, surveying the chaos before her. Richard slumped in his chair, his lawyers in frantic consultation. Vanessa had gone pale, her hand still on her stomach. I've heard enough, Judge Santos said. Here's my preliminary ruling, subject to final documentation. All marital assets, including those hidden in Meridian Consulting, will be frozen pending full forensic audit. Mrs. Patterson will retain sole possession of the marital home. Mr. Patterson will pay temporary support of $5,000 monthly. I don't have $5,000, Richard shouted. Then get a job, Mr. Patterson, one that doesn't involve defrauding your clients. Judge Santos's eyes were steel. We'll reconvene in 30 days for final asset division. But I'll tell you right now, Mr. Patterson, you're fortunate this is a civil court, because if even half of what I've heard today is accurate, you'll be dealing with criminal court soon enough. She stood. Court adjourned. The final hearing came 30 days later. In that time, Richard's world had collapsed completely. The federal indictment came first. Wire fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion. 7 counts. Richard's face had been on the local news, the fall from grace of a once-respected financial advisor. His firm not only fired him, but sued him for damages. His professional license was revoked. Vanessa left him 2 weeks after the first hearing. I heard through Jennifer that she'd lost the baby. Stress, she claimed, though I suspected the timing was suspiciously convenient. She'd moved back to California, already posting on social media about her toxic ex and near miss with a criminal. No mention of her role in the fraud, of course. Richard tried to reach me several times. Desperate calls, rambling voicemails. Margaret, please, we can still work this out. I made mistakes, but we can... I deleted them without listening all the way through. The courtroom was packed for the final hearing. Word had spread. People love watching the mighty fall. Richard looked like he'd aged 10 years. His suit was rumpled, his eyes hollow. He couldn't afford his team of expensive lawyers anymore, just a single overworked public defender since his assets were frozen. Judge Santos reviewed the forensic accountant's final report. Mr. Patterson, over the course of your marriage, you accumulated approximately $1.2 million in marital assets. You attempted to hide roughly $800,000 of that through various schemes. The court finds that Mrs. Patterson is entitled to her full community property share, plus additional compensation for your fraudulent behavior. She looked up, her expression severe. Here is my final ruling. Mrs. Patterson will receive the marital home valued at $400,000, with the mortgage to be paid by Mr. Patterson as part of the asset division. Mrs. Patterson will receive 65% of all retirement accounts, investment portfolios, and liquid assets. This includes all money hidden in Meridian Consulting and related entities. Richard's attorney tried to object, but Judge Santos cut him off with a look. Additionally, Mr. Patterson will pay spousal support of $6,000 per month for the next 10 years, or until Mrs. Patterson remarries or passes away, whichever comes first. Given that Mr. Patterson is currently facing criminal charges and has no income, this support will accrue as a judgment debt. Your Honor, my client has no way to pay. Then he should have thought of that before committing fraud. Judge Santos's voice was ice. Mr. Patterson will also be responsible for all of Mrs. Patterson's legal fees, which currently total approximately $85,000. Richard made a strangled sound. Furthermore, Judge Santos continued, given Mr. Patterson's demonstrated dishonesty and the severity of his fraudulent behavior, I'm ordering that he be permanently barred from accessing, controlling, or attempting to claim any portion of Mrs. Patterson's awarded assets. Any attempt to do so will result in contempt charges. She looked directly at Richard. Mr. Patterson, You attempted to use the legal system to steal from your wife after 43 years of marriage. You hid assets. You lied under oath. You committed fraud. This court does not look kindly on such behavior. Consider yourself fortunate that you're only facing financial consequences here." She banged her gavel. "Divorce granted. This court is adjourned." Richard sat motionless, staring at nothing. His attorney was already packing up, clearly eager to escape. I stood, smoothed my dress, and walked toward the exit. As I passed Richard's table, he looked up at me. "Margaret," he whispered, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." I paused. For 43 years, I'd wanted to hear those words. Now they meant nothing. "I'm not," I said quietly. "Because if you hadn't done this, I never would have learned how strong I really am." Outside the courthouse, Patricia was waiting with a broad smile. "Congratulations, Margaret. You won. Completely." Jennifer and Marcus were there too, pulling me into a group hug. "Mom, you were amazing," Marcus said. "I'm so proud of you," Jennifer added, tears in her eyes. But the real victory came 2 weeks later, when the criminal trial began. I attended every day, sitting in the gallery, watching Richard stumble through testimony, watching his lies unravel. The jury took less than 4 hours to convict on all counts. 5 years in federal prison, complete restitution to his former firm, permanent ban from the financial services industry. As the marshals led Richard away in handcuffs, he looked back at me one last time. I didn't smile, didn't gloat, just met his eyes with calm certainty. This was justice. Real, complete, uncompromising justice. I'd fought for it, earned it, won it, and I'd never felt stronger in my life. That evening, I returned to my house, legally mine now, and sat in the garden where this had all begun. The roses I'd been deadheading that day when Diane Morrison first called were blooming again, vibrant and alive. I'd survived. More than that, I'd won. Richard had tried to erase me, to reduce 43 years of partnership to nothing. Instead, he'd erased himself, and I was still standing. 6 months after the final judgment, I sold the house. I know that might sound strange after fighting so hard to keep it, but the truth was, I didn't want to live there anymore. Too many memories, too many ghosts. The place where Richard had told me he wanted a divorce, where Vanessa had stood in my kitchen with that smug smile. I didn't need it anymore. I bought a smaller place instead. A charming cottage near the lake, with a garden twice the size of my old one, and a view of the water from my bedroom window. It was mine, truly mine, bought with my money from the settlement. No one could take it from me. Jennifer helped me move, and we painted the walls together, soft blues and greens, colors that made me happy. Marcus installed new bookshelves and a window seat where I could read in the afternoon sun. "This is perfect, Mom," Jennifer said, standing back to admire our work. "It feels like you." She was right. The old house had been ours, then Richard's. This cottage was mine alone. I started taking classes at the community college, art history, creative writing, things I'd always wanted to study but never had time for. I joined a book club, made new friends who knew nothing about my past except what I chose to share. I traveled. First, a cruise to Alaska with a group from church, then a trip to Italy with Marcus, where we ate pasta and drank wine and explored ancient ruins. I'd spent 43 years putting everyone else first. Now, finally, I was putting myself first. Money wasn't a concern anymore. The settlement had been substantial, and I'd invested wisely, ironically, using everything I'd learned watching Richard over the years. The monthly support payments came like clockwork, garnished directly from whatever work Richard managed to find. I even started dating. Nothing serious, just coffee here and there with a retired teacher named George, who made me laugh and never once made me feel like I was too old for anything. Life was good, better than good. Meanwhile, Richard's life had become a cautionary tale. He served 3 years of his 5-year sentence, released early for good behavior. I heard about it through Jennifer, who'd maintained minimal contact with him. Holiday calls, nothing more. When he got out, Richard moved to a studio apartment in a rough part of town, the kind of place he would have sneered at in his old life. He worked as a bookkeeper for a small heating repair company, making a fraction of what he used to earn. Every month, a chunk of his paycheck went to me, to his former firm, to the IRS. He'd declared bankruptcy, but the support payments were non-dischargeable. He'd be paying them until he was 81 years old. Jennifer showed me a photo once. Richard looked ancient, worn down, defeated. His hair had gone completely gray. He'd lost weight, his expensive suits replaced by cheap button-downs from discount stores. "He asked about you," Jennifer said quietly. "Wanted to know if you were happy." "What did you tell him?" "The truth, that you're thriving." I wasn't vindictive enough to be glad about Richard's suffering, but I wasn't sad about it either. He'd made his choices. Now, he was living with the consequences. Vanessa's trajectory was even steeper downward. After leaving Richard, she'd tried to reinvent herself again. New name, new city, new target. But her past had a way of catching up with her. An investigative journalist had written an exposé about her pattern of targeting wealthy men. The article went viral, complete with court documents, testimonies from previous victims, and photos. The Black Widow of the Country Club, they called her. Last I heard, she was working in a call center in Nevada, her carefully constructed image shattered beyond repair. No more designer clothes, no more luxury cars. Just the consequences of a life built on lies. Sometimes, late at night in my cottage by the lake, I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months before all this started. Timid, uncertain, afraid to make waves. A woman who'd let herself be diminished, who'd accepted crumbs and called it love. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger. Someone who'd faced down her worst fears and won. Someone who'd learned that she was worth fighting for. My children saw the change, too. "You're different, Mom," Marcus said during one of his visits. "Lighter, somehow. Happier." "I am happier," I told him. "For the first time in years, maybe decades, I'm exactly where I want to be." One afternoon, I was working in my garden when I saw a car slow down on the street. A familiar car. Richard's beat-up sedan. He didn't stop, didn't get out. Just drove slowly past, looking at the cottage. Looking at me. I straightened up, met his gaze through the car window. I didn't wave, didn't smile. Just stood there, trowel in hand, surrounded by flowers I'd planted myself in soil I owned. Then I turned back to my garden and continued planting. When I looked up again, he was gone. Good. I had roses to tend and a life to live. And unlike Richard, I still had a future worth looking forward to. So that's my story, a 68-year-old woman who refused to disappear quietly. What did I learn? That strength doesn't always look like fighting. Sometimes it looks like patience, preparation, knowing your worth and refusing to settle for less. I learned that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, never too late to start over, never too late to discover who you really are. What would you have done in my place? Would you have signed those papers? Or would you have fought? I'd love to hear your thoughts, and if my story helped you, please share it. You never know who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening to An Old Woman's Tale. May you always know your worth.